Okay, so I've finished applying the liquefy effect, I guess you could say, to my letters. I made it all the way around all three of my letters here. So this is how my text is looking. Hopefully yours is looking pretty cool too. Go ahead and click on OK inside the liquefy command to actually apply the liquefy filter to your text. And now our text looks something like this, which is great. The next thing that I want to do is I want to lock the transparency on my text layer or on the ice layer. So make sure you have that layer selected and go ahead and click on this icon here inside the layers palette, lock transparent pixels. And what I want to do, the next sort of series of steps that I want to run you through, we're going to be piling different Photoshop filters on top of one another. Again, where the real magic seems to happen in Photoshop is when we start piling commands and piling effects on top of one another. So here's what I'm going to have you do. Hit the D key on your keyboard. What that does is that switches your foreground and background color back to their defaults. So you should have black in the foreground and white in the background. Now, next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a filter called Clouds. So head up to the filter menu, down to Render, and then over to Clouds, and we should get something like this happening. Okay, that's great. Next, what I want to do is I want to apply a stroke to my letters, a black stroke. So I'm going to head to the Edit menu, and then down to Stroke. Make sure that the stroke width is set to 5 pixels. Make sure the color is set to black. The location is set to inside, and your blending mode is set to normal, and your opacity is set to 100%. Perfect. Go ahead and click on OK. You should get a nice black outline around your letters there. Okay, now for more filters. Here we go. I want to blur my clouds, my letters, just a little bit. So I'm going to use the Gaussian blur. So I'll head up to Filter, and then down to Blur, and then down to Gaussian blur. For the radius on this fella, I'm going to crank this way up, maybe around 5, 6, 7, something like that. Should get a nice blur effect there. Go ahead and click on OK to apply that. Now, as I was learning Photoshop years and years ago, what I realized when I was messing around with special effects is if I started duplicating layers and then applying blending modes and different filters and so on to the different layers, that's where some real awesomeness happened as well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take I'm calling it the text layer, even though it's no longer a text layer, but my ice layer anyway. I'm going to take that guy, and what I want to do is I want to duplicate him. So I'm going to take him here, and I'm going to drag him down to the new layer icon down at the bottom of the layers palette. We now have ice copy. That's great. I'm going to hide this new copy, just click on his eyeball there, and I'm going to select my previous ice layer, and then I'm going to go and apply a filter to this guy, a filter called Plastic Wrap. So head up to your filter menu again, down to Artistic, and then look for Plastic Wrap. Okay, inside the Plastic Wrap filter, I want to go and set some options here. The highlight strength, I want to increase, maybe to about 14 or 15, maybe 16, something like that. And by the way, inside this little preview area here on the left-hand side, you're going to see your Plastic Wrap filter get applied there. So again, the idea here is to make it look like ice here, chiseled ice. So I cranked up the highlight strength. The detail, I think I'm going to drop my detail maybe down to about 2 or maybe 1. I think I'm going to go down to 1. And then my smoothness, I'm going to crank way up, all the way up to 15 there. There we go. Something like that looks cool. Go ahead and click on OK to apply that. Looks good. Maybe I'll zoom in here so we can actually see this a little closer. There we go. Something like that. All right. Now, I'm going to select the copy, the ice copy layer. Go ahead and turn him on and make sure you have him selected. We're going to apply another filter to this guy, a filter called Chrome. So once again, back to the filter menu, down to Sketch, and then look for Chrome. Over on the right-hand side, I'm going to drop my detail all the way down to 0, and I'm going to crank my smoothness all the way up to 10, something like that. All right, go ahead and click on OK. All right, now what we have here are 2 layers, 2 ice layers, but the copy is covering up the original, if that makes sense. So I'm going to take my ice copy layer, I'm going to select him, and I'm going to change his blending mode to overlay. All right, now we can see the previous layer through the copy. I'm going to select the original ice layer, and I'm going to change his blending mode to overlay as well. All right, there we go. Now we have some ice text happening here. Okay, now there's a few other things that I want to show you. So as we did earlier, we'll continue on with this exercise in the next lesson.